Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Build, where I build it and play it. So, when I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Most recently, there was two decks that were basically kind of the predominant decks of the format in a competitive sense, which I usually didn't pay attention to, but I thought this time I would actually try to get in there and see what was going on in the meta to make myself a better player. And those two decks were Pendulum Magician and True Draco, back in their heyday with Masterpiece at 3. True Draco was the decisive deck of that format, because even though we had just came out of the craziness that was Zodiac and the Zodiac format, True Draco had a very short time where it was appreciated, mostly due to the fact that Masterpiece is a hell of a card. He's a busted card that caused a lot of problems, because he was hard to remove, and you basically had to play Kaijus to have most of a chance of getting him off the board. Not always the case, but was true for a long time. So, we're playing True Dracos today, and we're going to see what this now Tier 2 deck has in store. This deck has been popping up in the meta, but usually it only steals maybe one top at a YCS level event. So, although I usually don't like touching on the meta, I thought it'd be fun to go ahead and do this, especially since it's one of my favorite competitive decks current. Obviously, my favorite deck is Sky Strikers, but I did an episode on that. You can check it out. There's a playlist of all the Let's Builds. So, True Dracos are built upon one main effect. That effect is that all of their monsters can be tribute summoned using continuous spell and trap cards as their tribute materials. Is it materials? Anyways, so that means that you can just slap out a bunch of your spell and trap cards, since the archetype is full of continuous spell and trap cards, tribute those cards to summon out your monsters. And most of them only require one tribute. The only one that's unbanned right now is Metaltron, or however his name is pronounced, and he costs 3 materials. But we're not looking at that style of deck, so everything will require only one tribute, which makes it nice. Now, all of the spell cards in the archetype, when they are sent to the graveyard from the spell and trap zone, as in when they're tributed, are destroyed by an effect, they can pop a spell or trap card that's on the field, and the trap cards, when they are sent from the spell or trap zone to the graveyard, they destroy a monster. Now, this allows the deck to continuously generate advantage by destroying your opponent's stuff while you are activating effects to either draw cards or move forward, which makes it a very strong control deck. Not quite as strong as Sky Strikers are, obviously, but since the monsters have pretty hefty bodies, unlike Sky Strikers, this deck can put game on board rather quickly. So it doesn't have as strong of negation as Sky Strikers, but it has the power naturally within inside of its archetype, and arguably has one of the best field spells in the game. So with that said, let's build True Dracos. See, I get to hold her up, because she's the waifu of the deck. I don't care if some people are only playing 2. She's awesome and I love her. And this son of a bitch can go to hell.
Run. Run.
Alright everybody, let's check out this deck profile. You're going to be running one Dynamite, the true Draco fighter. You're going to be running 3 Darius the Third, the true Draco cavalry general. You're going to be running 3 Ignis Heats, and 3 of my girl, Majesty Maiden, the true Draco caster. 3 Inspector Borders, 3 Card of Demise, 2 Terraforming, 2 Pot of Dualities, 1 March of the Monarchs, 3 True Draco Heritage, 3 Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix, 3 Dragonic Diagram, 3 Summon Limits, 1 True King's Return, 2 Monarchs Erupt, 3 True Draco Apocalypse, 1 Soul Drain, and nothing in the extra deck. The True Dracos, when built with a competitive mindset, are easily a tier 2 deck. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is different than the True Dracos I played against Deli. If you saw the dueling with Deli where I played True Dracos against his supposed hero deck that never took off. So, as I mentioned earlier, True Dracos operate by tributing continuous spell and trap cards, which we are playing a lot of. 17 of the cards in our deck are continuous spell and trap cards. So let's dig a little bit deeper into why we're playing these cards and this stun style variant of True Dracos. Dynamite is honestly one of the best cards in the deck. He has a 2500 body, and once per turn during either player's turn, when an opponent activates a card or effect, just like the other True Dracos monster cards, except for Darius the Third. While you control this tribute summoned monster, you can take 1 True Draco or True King continuous trap card from your deck and either activate it or add it to your hand. Remember, you can activate, so you can search for stuff like True King's Return or True Draco Apocalypse and activate it to set up for a counterplay. So remember that is important. Darius the Third, the true Draco cavalry general, is a decent body with a 2100 or a decent defense wall at 2800. But the important part about him is that your opponent cannot target face-up True Draco or True King monsters on the field with card effects except this one. Also, they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So getting him out after you establish a good strong board is prominent because between it and Diagram, you can really protect your True Dracos and let your stun cards prevent your opponent from breaking your board while you punch them down and kill them. Moving on, Ignis Heat. His effect is that when your opponent activates an effect card during either player's turn, you can search for a continuous spell card, which is extremely useful. My girl, Majesty Maiden here, she searches your monster cards when they activate an effect. But again, you have to remember that these have to be tribute summoned. That's why we don't play cards like Monster Reborn. The only card that in our deck that will special summon one of them is True King's Return. So that's something to remember, is if you use that, they are not tribute summoned. And if you do use tribute summon them using a spell or trap, they are still tribute summoned. Don't let anyone argue on that. They shouldn't, but who knows, someone might. Inspect Border. Inspector Border cannot be normal summoned or special summoned if you control a monster, which kind of sucks, can be kind of bricky, but the main thing is his stunnery effect. Because while he is on the field, neither player can activate a monster effect unless the number of monster effects that player has previously activated this turn is less than the number of monster card types currently on the field: Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, and Link. If an effect activation was negated, it still counts towards the total for that turn. So if you negate, which this deck doesn't do very much, that would still count. This is really great for if you don't have a good opening play on turn 1, you can drop Inspector Border, and since decks nowadays are so reliant on monster effects, he can really make a lot of decks just start sputtering in space. And people have a tendency to kind of forget. And he's got a 2000 body, which can be hard to run over without monster effects, but he is killable, so look out for that. Next up is Card of Demise. Card of Demise is an awesome card because it lets you draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. And since you are playing so many spell or trap cards, you can set all of those. Just don't be like me and set in all of your zones. I've done that multiple times. And then you can't play it. But it does come with two terrible downsides. One is the less annoying part of it. That is that you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. Only one card in the deck special summons. So no problems there. The actual thing to keep in mind while playing in physical or just playing online in general is that your opponent does not take damage during after you activate this card. Now, you can attack, deal damage, then play this card. But if you're trying to draw into your monsters or into your spell and traps, get your monsters out. Remember that you don't deal damage. That can screw you over if you are not careful. I am notoriously bad for forgetting about it. Luckily, I don't yet own this deck in real life, because I will have to remember that. Otherwise, I will get in some trouble at the kitchen table. 2 copies of Terraforming, since they're just 2 extra copies of Diagonic Diagram, as long as it's not negated. 2 copies of Pot of Duality. Some builds play 3, I find that 2 works really well, and a lot of other builds that I've seen online are running the 2. It lets you excavate the top 3 cards of your deck and add one of them to your hand. Also after that, shuffle the rest back into the deck. You can only activate once per turn, and you cannot special summon the rest of the turn, or during the turn, you activate this card. Oh no! I love this deck. It doesn't special summon. I love it. Next up is March of the Monarchs. Tribute summon monsters that you control cannot be targeted by or destroyed by card effects. This card is a little iffy, due to the fact that Darius III is a card that exists inside the deck, and they kind of do the same things. But it is a non-monster, so if they send him to the graveyard through a non-destruction effect that does not target, which there are a lot of in the current game, this card can back you up, and also it is a continuous spell card, so you can tribute it to summon, but you could cut this card for a Pot of Duality or a Pot of Desires with your 3 true Draco heritages. During your main phase, you can draw cards equal to the number of true Draco and true King card types, monster, spell, and trap, sent from the field to the graveyard this turn. So if you've tributed 1 of each, you will draw 3 cards. If you try trapping a monster, 2 cards. It is not the number of cards you tributed, it is the number of types of cards. During your main phase, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, tribute summon 1 true Draco or true King monster. And all of the traps and spells have this effect, and that effect is not attached to the other effect. But there is a period there. Yes, it's sent from the field to the graveyard this turn, period. During your main phase, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, tribute summon 1 monster. That is a separate effect. Don't let anyone bamboozle you. Alright, so Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix. You can target 3 True Draco and or True King cards in your graveyard, shuffle them into your deck, then draw 1 card. 1 card. One mas. So this one is really nice because it can allow you to reshuffle back in your resources, such as your 1 copies of Dynamite and True King's Return. So that is very useful, and of course it's tribute fodder for your monsters. One of the best filled spells in the game, in my opinion, Dragonic Diagram. As said, I got back in when this deck was still hot and going, and this was an expensive card. But all true Draco and true King monsters on the field gain 300 attack and defense, and the first time each tribute summoned, again they have to be tribute summoned, not special summoned, true Draco or true King monster would be destroyed by a battle each turn, it is not destroyed. Period. Those periods are important. It is not destroyed. Now, once per turn, you can destroy 1 other card you control or in your hand, and if you do, add 1 true Draco or true King card from your deck to your hand. So, I emphasized 2 little words in there. One is that hand, or in your hand. So you can destroy a card in your hand, but Diagonic Diagram can be used to forcefully trigger your spell or trap cards to send them to the graveyard to destroy your opponent's stuff, and you can search something to replace them or search one of your monsters that you need. And a very big tip with the Gonic diagram is that it just is a soft once per turn. That means you can use a Dagonic diagram, pop a card from your hand or field, get your search, activate another Dagonic diagram, activate its effect, and get another search. Because again, soft once per turn, not a hard once per turn. Very key thing there. So moving on along to Summon Limit, one of the other stun cards of the deck. Neither player can summon more than 2 times per turn. Negated summons do count towards this limit. Negated cards / effects that would summon do not count. So if a card says negate the summon when you use it, that's one thing. But if you activate a card that would summon, but its effect was negated, that is a different thing. It's kind of complicated, but it's a different thing. But again, this deck does not do a whole lot of summoning. It might summon twice per turn. Now, something else to remember with this card is that a pendulum summon, or a card that summons multiple monsters, or an effect that summons multiple monsters, is 1 summon. So if your opponent pendulums 2 level 4s, and then ranks them, or overlays them into an Xyz, that is a legal play. Do not think just because they summon 2 monsters that they are done. If they were summoned off of the same thing, off the same card effect, or a pendulum summon, that is 1 summon. That's also why you can Solemn Strike a pendulum summon, and they get no monsters. I don't know what's with the finger guns today, but I'm finger gunning up a storm. Anyways, True King's Return. I love this trap card. It is a great trap card. You can activate the following effects of True King's Return in the same chain. So remember that, same chain. So I'll just scroll on down. Oh, look at that. Look at that effect text. MQT would just be crying because of how much effect text there is on this. Tears. But anyways, so the first effect. You can target 1 True Draco or True King monster in your graveyard and special summon in defense mode. Also, for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon. This is literally the only card in the deck that special summons, so whatever. And again, remember, if it's special summoned using this effect, it does not get its effects, because they have to be tribute summoned. They also don't gain the protections, because they were not tribute summoned from the Monarch cards. It's very important. I cannot reiterate that enough. And then the second effect is during your opponent's main phase, you can immediately, after this effect resolves, tribute summon 1 True Draco or True King monster face up. You can only use each effect of True King's Return once per turn. Moving on. The Monarchs Erupt. Activate this card only if you have no cards in your extra deck. Boom. No extra deck, because this is not extra deck True Dracos. So you don't have to worry about that. And the other stipulation, though, you do need to worry about. You must control a tribute summoned monster. Negate the effects of all face-up monsters on the field while those monsters are face-up on the field, except tribute summoned monsters. During your end phase, if you control no tribute summoned monsters, send this card to the graveyard. So this is really good for just stopping decks in their tracks. So you have so many decks that want to activate their monster effects. They just want to drop all these monsters on the field and activate their effects. And almost no deck tribute summons, except this deck. This deck does it a lot. And Monarchs, of course, but who plays Monarchs in 2019? So moving on, the True Draco Apocalypse. Itch my ear again. Just like the last one, you can activate the following effects of True Draco Apocalypse in the same chain. Woo! Yay! So, the first effect, you can target 1 other True Draco or True King card you control. Destroy it. So, like your spell or trap cards. But remember, you cannot target itself. The attack and defense of all face-up monsters your opponent controls become half their current attack and defense, even if this card leaves the field, and that is a permanent halving. So that can save you quite a bit. And it has the same effect as the other one True King's Return does, that you can basically tribute summon on your opponent's turn. Very handy, especially if they bounce your cards back to your hand. Take that, Stormy Mirror Force that no one's playing right now. The last card of the deck, Soul Drain. Activate by paying 1,000 life points. And monsters that are banished, as well as monsters in the graveyard, cannot activate their effects. Let's start a chain. So, this is extremely useful against stuff like Orcust. Try it, Orcust. Try to banish your stuff. So again, it is another stun card to try to prevent your opponent from setting up one of the ridiculous boards that this game so much likes to do. This can also slow down Warrior Goki-style decks, even though those are falling out of favor. Oh, and it also stops Ray from coming back. So this is my build for True Draco Stun. Is it the best build out there? Probably not, but it is a extremely fun casual deck that can easily play inside of locals, and even this particular build that I am running could probably play in a higher level tournament and do okay. There are better builds. Some people do try to splash in some hand traps. Some people knock out, or a lot of players will knock out some of the Monarch stuff to put in other stuff. There is also extra deck True Dracos, because True Dracos are basically the Monarchs of 2019 and 2018. They're the modern Monarchs. They rely on tribute summoning, and people hate them. But that is kind of how this deck runs. Your main purpose when playing this deck is to draw as many cards as you can, put out your tribute fodder, tribute, and then lock down your opponent. When your opponent can do stuff, to gain advantage and grind your opponent out and into the dust with big ol' beefy monsters, which is probably why I like this deck. It's a little bit kind of like playing old school Yu-Gi-Oh, but in a modern way. So I applaud that. And the fact that Masterpiece, this big old bad boy right here, is banned, actually makes me like the deck better, as I said before, because it's not Masterpiece Turbo. I would, since I play traditional in real life at the kitchen table, I would play one just because he's such a great card. But I'm actually really glad that he is banned, because way too often this deck was just fart out Masterpiece and protect the castle to a win. So that's all I've got for this Let's Build. If there is a deck that you would like to see me build and present, put it down in the comment section down below. You can put what deck, or a deck theme, like MQT had the level 1 beatdown. And you can even say what type of deck you would like it to be. Would you like it to be more competitive, like regional, or a YCS, which would be really hard for me to do since I don't play those? Would you like it to be locals level, casual, super kitchen table? You decide! But put that down in the comment section, and I will take a look at whatever is down there and decide whether or not to build it. If you'd like to see me playing True Dracos, as I mentioned, I played them in Dueling with Deli a while back, where it was a while back. Anyways, I played a different version of True Dracos using stuff like Solemn Strike. But that is all I've got for you guys today. Think about subscribing, maybe, or liking the video. Who knows? But I will see you guys next time, and hey, have fun, and keep your finger pistols in control.